The Arizona sun beat down like a hammer on anvil. Across the scorched earth, a pregnant bobcat, ribs showing through her tawny fur, limped toward a rocky outcrop. Her name didn't matter. Only her swollen belly did. 3 lives depended on her finding shelter before nightfall. What she didn't see was the 15-foot desert python draped over the sandstone ledge above, its forked tongue tasting her scent. This wasn't just a predator. This was death itself, patient as the desert, hungry as the drought. As the bobcat passed beneath the rocks, a single pebble dislodged. Her ears twitched. Too late. The python's body uncoiled like a whip. Fangs sank into the bobcat's shoulder. Coils thicker than a man's arm cinched around her torso. Once, twice, 3 times. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. She screamed, a sound that shattered the desert's silence. Her claws raked bloody streaks across the python's scales, but the serpent only tightened its grip. Every gasp pulled the coils tighter. Every heartbeat squeezed her unborn kits. The python's cold eyes watched as she weakened. This was nature's ancient dance. Kill or be killed. But then, a boot crunched gravel. The python's head swiveled. Standing 20 yards away, Dr. Evan Cross, a 42-year-old wildlife biologist, dropped his water bottle. His training said never interfere. His heart said something else. The bobcat's golden eyes met Evan's, not with fear, but a plea. Her contractions had started. The python felt them too and squeezed harder. Evan didn't think. He charged, yelling, waving his arms. The python hissed, a sound like escaping steam, but held its prize. Evan grabbed a dead saguaro arm, jammed it between the coils. The python struck at his face. He jerked back, felt fangs graze his shirt. The bobcat gasped as one coil loosened, just enough to sink her teeth into the python's neck. Blood filled her mouth. The serpent thrashed, its body whipping Evan's legs out from under him. He landed hard, seeing stars. Somewhere in the blur, he heard a new sound. Not the bobcat, not the snake. Wheels on gravel. An old Ford pickup crested the ridge, dust swirling behind it like a ghost. The truck door groaned open. Out stepped Marlene Crenshaw, 68, in a faded denim shirt and turquoise bolo tie. She didn't run, didn't shout, just strode toward the chaos, her silver braids swinging. Evan choked out, "Stay back!" Marlene ignored him. From her pocket came a small vial. She splashed its contents at the python's face. Pine oil. The snake recoiled like it'd been burned. One coil slipped, then another. The bobcat twisted free, collapsing onto her side, belly heaving. Marlene knelt, hands hovering over the shuddering animal. "Labor's too early," she muttered. Evan stared. "You're her," he breathed. "The legendary desert vet." Marlene's eyes never left the bobcat. "Help me get her in the truck, or those kits die by sundown." Evan hesitated. Protocol demanded he walk away. But the bobcat's breath came in shallow rasps, her tongue lolling. Blood matted her fur where the python's fangs had pierced. Marlene didn't wait. She wrapped the bobcat in her shirt, revealing scars across her forearms, old claw marks. "Your choice, doctor," she said, loading the animal into the truck. The python, still hissing, slithered toward a crevice. Evan made his decision. He scooped up the vial of pine oil and sprinted after Marlene. As the engine roared to life, the bobcat whimpered, her body contracting violently. Marlene pressed a calloused hand to the animal's belly. "2," she announced. "Maybe 3. The truck bounced over the desert floor, each jolt making the bobcat yowl. Evan gripped the door handle. Will she make it? Marlene's jaw tightened. Not to any hospital. She turned down a hidden washboard road. We're going to my place. Ahead, a ramshackle adobe appeared, its porch lined with wind chimes made of coyote bones. The python wasn't finished. As Evan turned to follow Marlene, the snake lunged from the rocks, striking at his boot. He stumbled back, adrenaline surging. The biologist in him knew this wasn't just defense. The python was starving, desperate. Its eyes locked onto the struggling bobcat in Marlene's arms. Evan grabbed the saguaro arm again, jabbing at the serpent's head. The python recoiled, hissing like a pressure cooker. For a heartbeat, they stood frozen, man and beast in a deadly standoff. Then, with a sound like shaking pebbles, the snake retreated into the shadows. Evan's hands shook. He'd won. But as he turned, he saw the bobcat's eyes rolling back in her head. Marlene cursed. "She's crashing." The truck door slammed. The engine roared. Somewhere behind them, the python watched, waiting. Evan barely had both feet in the truck when the python struck again. This time, it aimed for the tires, its massive body coiling around the rear wheel. The truck lurched. Marlene floored the gas, but the python held on, dragging through the dirt. The bobcat wailed, her claws digging into the seat. Evan leaned out the window, swinging the saguaro arm like a bat. A sickening crack echoed as it connected with the snake's skull. The python went limp, its grip loosening. Marlene didn't slow down. "It's not dead," she muttered. Evan watched in the side mirror as the serpent twitched back to life, its head rising like a periscope. It knew where they were going, and it would remember. The bobcat's breathing grew shallow, her sides heaving in uneven spasms. Evan pressed a hand to her belly. The kits were still moving. For now. Marlene swerved onto a hidden desert trail, the truck bouncing over rocks. "Almost there," she growled. But the python wasn't giving up. Evan spotted it slithering alongside them, keeping pace like a shadow. He reached for Marlene's vial of pine oil, empty. The snake sensed weakness. It surged ahead, cutting them off at a narrow pass. Marlene slammed the brakes. Dust clouded the windshield. When it cleared, the python was coiled in front of the hood, its mouth gaping. Evan's blood ran cold. Then Marlene did something insane. She revved the engine and flipped the headlights on. The sudden glare blinded the serpent. It flinched, just enough. She hit the gas. The truck bucked over the python's tail, leaving it thrashing in their dust. Evan's mind raced as the adobe house came into view. Why he had done this. He wasn't some hero. He was a scientist, a rule follower. Then the bobcat whined, her claws kneading the seat in pain. He remembered his wife's voice years ago as they buried their stillborn daughter. "Some lives demand we break the rules, Evan." The memory hit like a punch. Marlene threw the truck into park, already shouting orders. Boil water, towels, scissors. Evan carried the bobcat inside, her body limp with exhaustion. The house smelled of sage and old leather. On the wall, yellowed newspaper clippings showed a younger Marlene, a wildlife vet hailed as a miracle worker. But one headline stood out. Local vet loses license after controversial rescue. Evan's stomach dropped. What had he gotten himself into? The python lingered at the edge of the property, its tongue flicking toward the house. Inside, the bobcat lay on a faded Navajo blanket, her sides contracting violently. Marlene worked fast, rubbing the queen's muscles with warmed oil. Evan held the bobcat's head, whispering, "Fight, Mama, just a little longer." Then, a guttural scream. The first kit slid into Marlene's hands, still in its sack. She tore it open, rubbing the tiny body until a weak mule filled the room. The python outside pressed against the window, as if watching. Then something unexplainable. The bobcat locked eyes with the serpent through the glass and growled. Not in fear, in warning. The python recoiled. For a long moment, it stared. Then, like a nightmare fading at dawn, it slithered back into the desert. Evan exhaled. But Marlene wasn't celebrating. "2 more kits coming," she said, her hands already moving, "and Mama's losing blood." The real battle was just beginning. The bobcat's breath came in ragged gasps as Marlene worked like a battlefield medic, tying off ruptured veins with fishing line. Blood soaked the blanket beneath her. Evan pressed a towel against the worst wound, his hands shaking. "She's fading," he muttered. The first kit nuzzled blindly against its mother's fur, searching for milk that wasn't there. Then a violent spasm. The second kit shot into Marlene's palms, smaller than a mouse, not breathing. Without hesitation, she brought it to her lips and blew 2 sharp puffs into its tiny nostrils. A pause, then a shuddering squeak. Evan choked back tears. But the celebration died as the bobcat's head lolled sideways, her golden eyes dimming. Marlene grabbed Evan's wrist. "Talk to her," she ordered. "Make her fight." He leaned close, whispering the words he'd never gotten to say to his own child. "Stay, please." The third kit came stillborn. Marlene didn't waste time grieving. She rubbed its chest, swung it gently by the hind legs. Nothing. Outside, the wind howled like a mourning cry. Evan watched as Marlene wrapped the tiny body in cloth, her face unreadable. "Happens sometimes," she said flatly, but her hands trembled. Evan spotted the framed newspaper on the wall. Vets suspended after saving mountain lion from euthanasia. The date, 15 years ago, same year his daughter died. The bobcat whimpered, bringing him back. Marlene wiped her hands on her jeans. "Lost my license, my husband left, so I came here." She nodded to a dusty corner where a cougar skull sat on a shelf, its teeth filed down. Pet or patient, Evan didn't ask. The bobcat's sudden growl cut through the tension. She was trying to stand, to protect her living kits, even now. The bobcat dragged herself upright, fur matted with blood, and hunched over her 2 surviving kits. Her tongue rasped across their tiny bodies in slow, deliberate strokes, claiming them. Marlene exhaled sharply. She's accepting them. But then, a thud at the door. Evan froze. The python hadn't left. It slammed against the wood again, its massive body casting a shadow under the threshold. The bobcat bared her teeth, a hiss bubbling through the blood in her throat. Marlene moved first. She yanked open an old gun cabinet, empty except for a rusted machete. Evan grabbed it, but she shook her head. Not for the snake. She threw open the door. The python reared back, its hood flaring. But Marlene didn't attack. She slammed the machete into a hanging oil lantern, dousing the porch in flames. The serpent recoiled from the fire, its scales glistening. As it retreated, Marlene whispered, "Some things fear light more than blades." The bobcat watched and finally closed her eyes. Evan kept watch as the fire died, the machete across his knees. Inside, Marlene cradled the weaker kid against her chest, feeding it goat's milk through an eyedropper. The bobcat slept fitfully, her sides rising and falling like a broken bellows. Near dawn, Evan jerked awake to a soft sound, the mother licking her kits. Marlene smirked. "Told you she'd make it." But her smile faded as she lifted the bobcat's tail. Infection had set in. Evan's stomach dropped. Marlene rummaged through a crate of antique medicines, pulling out a cracked vial of penicillin. "Expired 2003, she muttered. "Better than nothing." As she injected the dose, the bobcat didn't even flinch. Too weak. Outside, the first rays of sun painted the desert gold. The python was gone, but the real enemy, time, was ticking. Evan studied the kits, their tiny mouths nursing air. Would sunrise bring life or graves? By noon, the bobcat could lift her head. Marlene hadn't slept. She'd stitched wounds, smeared honey on infected gashes, even sung lullabies in Navajo. Evan watched, stunned as she placed the kits on their mother's belly, guiding them to nurse. When they latched on, the bobcat purred for the first time, a sound like distant thunder. Marlene's eyes gleamed. They'll live. Evan nodded toward the door. And when she's healed, back to the wild? Marlene's face hardened. She stroked the bobcat's ear. No, She's home now. Evan frowned. You can't just watch me. She pulled back her sleeve, revealing parallel scars, bobcat claws, old and white. Found her as a cub, raised her, released her. Her thumb brushed the mother's forehead, and she came back pregnant. Evan's protest died as the bobcat nuzzled Marlene's hand, a gesture beyond instinct. This wasn't rescue, it was reunion. Outside, the desert waited. But in this dim room, a new family had been born, forged in blood, fire, and something rarer than both: trust. The weaker kit latched onto its mother with a sudden jerk, tiny paws kneading instinctively. Milk dribbled from its mouth at first, then came the strong, rhythmic suckling of life taking hold. Marlene exhaled a laugh that sounded more like a sob. Evan watched the mother bobcat's eyes soften from panic to purpose as her body finally gave what her babies needed. But the moment shattered as the larger kit squealed in pain, its leg bent at a sickening angle from the python's earlier crush. Marlene reached to inspect it, but the bobcat snarled, teeth bared. Evan froze. This wasn't aggression, it was calculation. The bobcat licked the crooked leg once, then clamped her jaws around it. A crack echoed. The kit screamed. Then, silence. The leg hung straighter. Marlene whispered, "Nature's first chiropractor." Outside, unseen in the scrub, yellow eyes blinked once and vanished. Marlene dunked a tin cup into a rainwater barrel, drinking deeply as dawn pinked the sky. Evan studied her, the sun-worn creases around her eyes, the way her hands moved with battlefield efficiency. "You named him yet?" he asked. Marlene snorted. "Ain't pets." But as she turned, Evan saw the lie in her smile. Inside, the mother bobcat lifted her head as Marlene approached. "Morning, ghost," she murmured, scratching behind the cat's ear. Evan raised an eyebrow. Marlene shrugged. "She came back from the dead, didn't she?" She pointed to the larger kit, the one who'd endured the broken leg. "Trooper." Then the runt, still frail, but fighting. "Spitfire." Evan expected her to stop. She didn't. Her calloused finger traced the stillborn's wrapped body on the shelf. Little Shadow. The wind chimes made of coyote bones tinkled softly, as if in approval or mourning. Evan found it at high noon, a shed snakeskin draped over Marlene's fence post, longer than a man. The message was clear: "I'm still here." Inside, Ghost hissed at the scent when Evan brought it in. Marlene barely glanced up from grinding herbs. "Means he's growing." She tossed the pestle aside. "And hungry." That night, Evan dreamed of fangs dripping venom, only to wake to real screams. He burst outside to see Marlene battling a 6-foot diamondback in the moonlight, her machete glinting. She pinned its head with a forked stick, then decapitated it with one brutal chop. Panting, she met Evan's horrified gaze. "Not our python, just a warning." She kicked the still-twitching body toward the darkness. "Tell your boss we're ready." For days after, Evan caught Ghost staring at the horizon, ears flat. She knew. The rock python wasn't just hunting, it was waiting for its moment. And so was something else. A shadow slinking along the ridgeline. Too big for a coyote.
The cougar appeared at dusk, tawny, scarred, missing half its tail. It dropped a freshly killed jackrabbit at Marlene's porch, then vanished. Evan gaped. "Friend of yours?" Marlene smirked, tossing the rabbit to Ghost. "Old patient." She peeled back her sleeve, showing 4 parallel scars matching the cougar's claws. "Fixed your dislocated jaw in '09. Ghost growled at the cougar's scent, but devoured the meal. That night, Evan awoke to guttural coughing sounds. Not from the house, but the cliffside. Through binoculars, he spotted the cougar patrolling the ridge, tail flicking. Then, movement below. The python, coiled near a rabbit den. The cougar leaped down, landing just feet away. Neither attacked. They circled, the cougar's coughs echoing like challenges. At dawn, both were gone. but the python's hunting grounds had shifted farther north. Evan finally understood. This wasn't just Ghost's fight. The desert itself had chosen sides. And Marlene? She greased her machete blade, humming. Some battles required more than teeth. At 5 weeks old, Trooper and Spitfire pounced on a scorpion, their baby fangs clicking harmlessly on its armor. Ghost watched from the porch, tail twitching in approval. Then her ears swiveled backward. Evan followed her gaze. Marlene stood at the grave mound, where Little Shadow lay buried under a cairn of white stones. She placed a tiny woven collar atop it, blue beads and a silver bell. Ghost limped to her side, licking Marlene's wrist once before sinking her teeth into the old woman's forearm. Blood welled. Marlene didn't pull away. Yeah, I know. Evan realized with a chill, this was no attack. It was a bond. That night, Ghost led her kits into the desert for their first real hunt. Marlene didn't stop her. She just knelt in the dirt, pressing her bleeding arm to the earth. A pact written in salt and iron. When the python's hiss echoed hours later, it didn't come from the dunes. It came from inside the house.
The hiss came from under the kitchen table, too close, too human-sounding. Evan grabbed the machete as Spitfire screeched, her tiny body dangling from the python's jaws. Ghost launched herself across the room, claws raking the snake's eyes. The python thrashed, smashing jars of herbs. Marlene didn't go for weapons. She slammed her boot down on the snake's tail, pinning it. Evan, the alcohol. He tossed her a bottle of 90-proof moonshine. She doused a rag, lit it with the stove, and hurled the fireball at the python's body. Flames licked its scales as it uncoiled in panic, dropping Spitfire. Ghost snatched her kit by the scruff, flinging it behind her. The python slammed Marlene into the wall, her head cracking adobe. As it reared to strike her throat, Evan saw 3 shadows leap through the open window. Ghost, Trooper, and the one-tailed cougar. The desert had sent its army. The cougar clamped onto the python's neck, fangs sinking between scales. Ghost went for its belly, ripping at the soft underhide where her kits had been crushed. Trooper, barely weaned, latched onto the tail, his baby teeth drawing first blood. The python whipped its body, sending the cougar crashing through the window. Marlene, blood trickling from her temple, crawled toward the fire poker. Evan stabbed the machete downward, but the snake twisted and the blade embedded in floorboards. The python coiled around Ghost, squeezing the old wound on her torso. Her ribs creaked. Spitfire let out a cry, not of fear, but fury. The 8-week-old kitten leapt onto the python's head, claws digging into its nostrils. The serpent flinched, its grip loosening 1 crucial inch, enough for Ghost to sink her canines into its spine. A wet snap echoed. The python went rigid. Then, silence.
The python didn't die quickly. It slithered toward the door, body dragging like a broken chain, leaving a shiny trail of fluid. Ghost limped after it, her fur matted with snake blood and her own. At the threshold, the python turned its head, not to strike, but to look at her. A long, slow blink. Then it collapsed, its final breath hissing through punctured lungs. Evan expected Ghost to walk away. She didn't. She licked the python's eyelids shut, a gesture eerily like respect. Marlene whispered, "She knows." The desert demanded balance. This snake had taken Little Shadow. It had nearly taken Spitfire. But it had also made Ghost stronger. As the cougar disappeared into the night, Trooper pounced on the python's tail, playing with death as kittens do. Only Spitfire seemed to understand the cost. She pressed her small body against her mother's heaving side. The war was over. Marlene stitched her own head wound without a mirror, her hands steady as a surgeon's. Ghost licked Trooper's bent leg, now healing crooked but strong.
Evan studied the bloodstains on the floor. They'll come back, won't they? Other snakes, other predators. Marlene squeezed honey onto Spitfire's clawed paw, bandaging it with old flannel. Yep. She nodded to Ghost, now sleeping in a sunbeam, her sides rising and falling evenly. But she's ready now. That night, Evan found Marlene at Little Shadow's grave, adding a python fang to the cairn. He placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't shrug it off. Inside, Ghost nosed open the bedroom door, the one place Marlene had always forbidden her to go. The walls were covered in photos, Marlene with a younger bobcat, a mountain lion cub, even a wolf hybrid, all bearing the same notch in their left ear, all wild, all hers. Ghost jumped onto the bed, curling around her kits on the worn quilt. She was home.
Spring came. The desert exploded in yellow blooms. Trooper and Spitfire chased lizards through the brush, their bodies sleek with growth. Ghost watched from the porch, her once limp now a slow, rolling gait. Evan packed his jeep, his research complete. Marlene handed him a tin of prickly pear jam. For the road. He nodded to Ghost. She could leave any time. Why doesn't she? Marlene smiled for the first time in months. She lifted Ghost's left ear, revealing a tiny, healed notch. She did leave, years ago. The truth hit Evan like monsoon rain. This wasn't just any bobcat. This was Marlene's first rescue, the one who started it all. Ghost rubbed against Marlene's legs, purring. Some bonds outlive the wild. As Evan drove away, he saw three shapes on the ridge: Ghost, the one-tailed cougar, and a new shadow. Another cat? A coyote? Guardians of the scrubland. The desert didn't need saving. It needed stewards. And Marlene? She had raised an army. At the Flagstaff gas station, Evan overheard two ranchers. That crazy vet's got herself a bobcat army now. The other laughed. Ain't just bobcats, cougars too. Even a damn bear cub last winter. Evan said nothing. He bought a postcard, addressing it to his ex-wife. On the back, he wrote, "Some hearts don't stay buried." Months later, a parcel arrived at Marlene's. A baby monitor camera and a note, "For the next generation." She mounted it above Ghost's favorite shelf, streaming Trooper and Spitfire's antics worldwide. The channel went viral. Desert Queen and her notched ear clan. Comments poured in. I had a cat like that. My grandma did this with foxes. Marlene never read them, but some nights, when the wind sang through coyote bone chimes, she'd pat the space beside her. Ghost would leap up, purring. The desert remembered its protectors, and the world, it was finally learning.
5 years later, Spitfire, now 15 pounds of muscle, dragged a wounded jackrabbit to the porch. Not to eat, but to present to her own single kit. The tiny silver-furred cub wobbled forward, mirroring Ghost's old limp. Marlene, hair whiter than ever, lifted the cub gently, checking for the telltale notch in its ear. Not yet. Inside, Ghost, now slow with age, groomed Trooper's mate, a feral tabby who'd shown up pregnant. The cycle continued. That night, as coyotes howled, Marlene unwrapped Little Shadow's collar, tying the bell around the new cub's neck. Ghost nuzzled her human's hand, her golden eyes reflecting firelight. Somewhere in the darkness, the one-tailed cougar screamed, a sound like breaking chains. The desert was alive. And in a rusty mailbox, a postcard from Evan arrived. Coming home, bringing my granddaughter. She wants to meet the legend. Marlene tucked it behind the photo of Ghost as a kitten, the circle unbroken. At sunset, Marlene led the granddaughter, a freckled 8-year-old, to Little Shadow's grave. The child placed a hand-carved bobcat figurine atop the stones. "Why do we save them?" she asked. Marlene knelt, her knees popping. "We don't."
She nodded to Ghost, now sleeping permanently under her favorite Palo Verde tree, and to Spitfire, who watched from the roof. "They save us." The girl petted the silver cub, its bell tinkling softly. That night, as the child slept, Marlene stepped onto the porch. The desert stretched endlessly, its secrets humming. Spitfire dropped a dead rattlesnake at her feet, unasked. Marlene smiled. Some lessons needed no words. She lifted the snake, tossing it toward the cliffs. A shadow, one-tailed, new, snatched it mid-air. The cycle endured. Inside, the baby monitor glowed, capturing the girl's sleepy whisper. "Good night, Ghost." The wind answered, or maybe it was purring. Either way, the legend lived.